All right. So now you tore everything down from your first client and you have to sanitize the work area again and set everything else up. So you're going to be setting up for all of your services from chemical waving, your predisposition test, your strand test, highlighting, and hair color retouch and virgin relaxer. So you're going to set up for all of those services. So I've sanitized my work area. I pulled everything out of my bag. I got rid of everything from the last services, threw them into their appropriate bags. And now I am making sure that I have everything for my next services. So I have my perm rods, my end wraps, my protective cream, my cotton, a plastic cap, my timer, and my water bottle, a chemical cape, 2 towels at least. I have actually another towel to lay everything out on. I have my simulated perming solution. I have my simulated color. I have my simulated relaxer. I have something to wash the ear behind the ear off and then something to wipe the ear off with. I have everything that I need to provide those services. So I made sure that they're in a bag. I have extra tail combs. I have extra regular combs for like pressing, just things in case I would drop anything on the floor. So now I need to make sure that I have all of that set up, all of that laid out. I actually can prep my client. It says, you will break down your work area and dispose of supplies used in the previous sections of this exam. You will prepare your work area for a new client. You will set up your universal supplies you will use for the remainder of the examination. You will also set up the supplies for the following sections of the examination: chemical waving, predisposition test, strand test, highlighting and foil, virgin application, which means from scalp to ends, highlighting with foil, hair color retouch, and virgin hair relaxer application. You'll prepare your client for those chemical services, which means at this point you can actually prep your client so that they are ready to rock and roll. You'll be expected to file all client protection, safety, and infection control procedures. I'd already sanitized my hands before I'm going to touch my clients. I have 15 minutes to do that. They'll tell me when I have 8 minutes remaining. Do not demonstrate any procedures until the verbal instructions are given and you're instructed to begin. Step back when you've indicated you're finished and the instructions are repeated, and then they tell you that you may begin. So this are the things that I'm evaluated on. Disinfects all work area completely with product labeled in English. Sanitizes your hands. Universal supplies are labeled in English, and items to be disinfected, soiled linen, and trash are disposed of in the correct area throughout the section. So at this point, I can actually drape my client because that's part of that 15 minutes. So for that, I'm going to make sure that I sanitize my hands again because now I'm going to be touching my client. I made sure my perm rods go around at least 2.5 times because that's the proper length that it needs for the hair. Make sure I have my towels. Make sure I actually have clips to hold the towels in place so that when I wrap my client, I make sure that they're ready to rock and roll. So I'm sectioning my client off, or draping my client, excuse me. And now I make sure that I have a chemical cape. So I actually have a cloth cape for the drying. Your kid's cape is actually an all-purpose cape. So you just need to make sure that you have something that's for all-purpose, or a cloth one for the hairstyling and hair cutting, and then a plastic one for your chemical services, and then I have my other towel for on top. So remember, towel cape, towel. If I need to clip the hair up out of the way, I can clip the hair up out of the way, whatever I need in order to make sure that my client is ready to rock and roll. So I have everything out. I have everything laid out. I have my client ready to rock and roll. So now at this point, I just step back and wait for them to tell me what to do next. So until everyone else is complete, that's when I can start. So the next service is chemical waving. I have 20 minutes to perform this service. You will perform chemical waving. You will wrap the entire center back section of the head from the crown to the nape Once you're finished wrapping, please step back and do nothing until the next verbal instructions are given. You'll be expected to follow all client protection, safety, and infection control, which means that we're going to put the protective cream on. It means that we're going to put the cotton on. It means that we have everything ready to go, but we don't actually do that yet. 20 minutes to complete it, 10 minutes remaining, they'll let us know. Do not perform the saturation procedure, a test curl, or remove a rod until instructed by the examiner to do so, and do not remove the remaining rods until you're instructed to do so. And then step back to indicate you're finished. They'll read them again, and then you may begin. So at this point, your hair will be kind of damp yet from the haircut, but you actually have to make sure that you get it thoroughly wet for the service. So making sure, and really, to be honest, I don't need to worry about a whole lot of the hair except this section in the middle where I'm going to be wrapping. So if you're worried about getting everything wet down well, don't worry about it. Start to section it out, get it ready to rock and roll, clip the rest of the hair out of the way. Because remember, we're only worried about that center back section from the crown to the nape. So I want to make sure that I'm in the center. I'm utilizing my mirror. I'm sectioning everything else up out of the way. Get it out of the way. At that point, I'm going to section off this middle section. I'm going to pull this section out of the way. I'm going to clip it up out of my way. I have my end wraps out. I have everything ready to rock and roll. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to clip that hair up out of the way so that it's not in my way, so that literally I can just start wrapping. So make sure that your section's not too long, that your rods are going to go past your section. So make sure that you have a nice parting so that you can be ready to rock and roll when it's time to wrap. So I need to have everything accessible. So you're not going to have a huge workspace, so you need to remember you have to stay within your workspace. So be conscientious of what your workspace is, because you have to stay in that workspace. So I have gloves. I have everything I need. I have my end wraps, and they told me I can begin. So I have 20 minutes to begin. I'm going to set my timer. Why would we need a timer? Safety and sanitation, because we know what it is that we have to wrap. I have my gloves in here. I have my cotton, everything I need. I'm going to make sure that I wrap. So I have 20 minutes to do this entire section. And remember, you want to take a parting that's the size of your tool, not too big, not too small, so that you can have a nice wrap on top of each other. You can do bookend, you can do regular wrap, you can do whatever it is that you need in order to double flat wrap, in order to get the desired results that you need. Remember, if you drop anything on the floor that includes your end wrap, you need to stop, throw it in your garbage, your trash, and put it and sanitize your hands and go back to work. So I'm going to get this wrapped. I got my timer going. Everything I need. I would not ever suggest anything larger than a white rod, or excuse me, a purple rod or a white rod. And then remember that I'm taking partings the size of my tools. All right, so I'm going to finish wrapping that, and then I'll come back and show you what the end results look like. All right, so that took me about 5 minutes to wrap it. So just make sure whatever you do, you try to stay half on, half off. If you started half on, half off, and that your parting is the size of your tool, and that you follow that all the way down to the end. So now I can get my client ready. So I want to make sure that I put my protective cream on, that I put my cotton around the hair, whatever I need to do in order to get that service ready. So I actually have a little tote of popsicle sticks that I have. So I want to make sure that I have my little container of protective cream that I can use. I have these little craft sticks, and I actually purchased them at Walmart, so you could utilize that. Make sure that you have your little container labeled that it's protective cream, that this little stick goes in the trash after that, and that you're anything you need. Now at this point, you can make the choice if you want to go around the hair or if you want to go around the hairline. I'm going to go around the hairline because I'm going to use this for the rest of my chemical services. So this way I'm protecting my client. It would be as if I did a full head. I want to make sure that I have my client thoroughly protected, that I'm following safety and sanitation, sanitizing my hands continually along the way, that I'm making sure that I am protecting my client on the ears and all around her hairline, everything I need. Rubbing that in. Then I'm going to take my cotton and I'm going to do enough cotton to just go around this section. I can go around the hair, yep, but I'm just going to go around this section where my rods are. So at this point, I've followed safety and sanitation. They're checking to make sure everything I had was labeled in English, meaning my perm solution, that all of my combs and everything are ready to rock and roll. I have subsectioned the hair for chemical waving. I've done my partings for chemical waving. I wrapped the hair, and then I made sure that I had the correct rod placement throughout top to bottom. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 perm rods within that section. So a dozen, I'd probably take 15 to 20 just to make sure if I dropped any on the floor that I would be okay without them, because I can't use them again because I wouldn't be able to go through the disinfection process in enough time. So I'm sanitizing my hands. I'm making sure that I have gloves for the service because I want to protect myself as well. See, I have my PPE on, so I have my lab coat and I have an apron on top of that. Nothing ever goes in your pocket or clipped on your jacket. You never want to get caught doing that. So now I have to wait. I'm going to step back until they tell me that I'm ready to apply the solution. Now I would have had saran wrap over the top of my bottle to make sure that I would have had to take off as I was going through. So now I need to think about protecting my client. So I'm going to have another towel that I'm utilized for the service, and I want to protect my client, their face, whatever I need to do. So if I go through protecting my client, following that rod top and bottom, they're going to come tell me what to do. So through the directions it says demonstrate saturation. So they're going to watch you each do this one-on-one. So make sure you're thoroughly saturating the hair as you're going through, following all the way through if you need to adjust your client's head. Then at this point, I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to change my cotton, which means that I'm going to take this cotton, throw it in my trash, and then I'm going to go back. Oops. So sanitize my hands or my gloves. And go back and apply a new piece of cotton around the section. So they've either moved on at this point or someone else is watching me from afar to make sure that I need that. And then I'm going to cover that with a plastic wrap. And I'm going to set my timer because that would be the true process that you would go through if you were actually perming someone. From there, they're going to tell me to demonstrate a test curl. So I'm going to make sure I remove my cap. I'm going to take my rod out. I'm going to unroll it 1.5 times, thumb to thumb, rock that forward, make sure that I have a curl. So they might ask you what you're looking for, depending on how, so you want to say a firm S shape the size of the tool. So they're going to watch me all the way go through this, and then they're going to say, please remove 1 rod from the hair. And the reason they're doing that, they're looking for fish hooks. So make sure you don't have any fish hooks. So I'm removing, they're watching you one-on-one. They got it all the way to the end. I can see that I have a nice curl, that I don't have any fish hooks. This needs to go into my to be disinfected. This needs to go into my trash. They're actually going to be watching that. So to be disinfected and trash. At this point, they're going to say to me, do not remove the remaining rods until instructed to do so. So at this point, you're going to wait for everyone else to finish up. And then they're going to say, all examiners have indicated they are ready to proceed. You will remove all remaining rods from the head and create 5 sections for the remaining services. You'll be expected to follow all client protection, safety, and infection control procedures. You have 5 minutes to take out the rods. Informed when you have 2 minutes left. Step back. They'll read that again, and they'll tell you you may now begin. So at this point, I'm going to throw my cotton in my trash. My plastic cap's going to go in my trash. I'm going to start removing rods. Remember, you only have 5 minutes to do so. I have 5 minutes remaining from the 20 that I set to wrap my rods and to remove that. So at this point, I could take my gloves off and throw them away as well. I'm going to wait to do that all at the end. I can use these gloves the entire time because this is considered the same client. So unless I really want to take them off, I don't have to, because again, remember, this is considered the same client. So the to be disinfected and the trash. So, and then after I get all the rods out, I'm going to section into 5. So I'm going to do a mohawk, side, 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 side. So I have everything out. That took me about 1 minute. Trash in there. I can throw these gloves away if I want. I can sanitize them, set them aside to use them again because it's the same client. So I'm going to start sectioning into 5. I can use the same clips that I had because it's considered the same client. I can use my same comb and everything. If I want to take out new ones, I can as well, but I don't have to. So I'm going to section into 5, 1 on the top, through the mohawk. I want to make sure that I have clean sectioning for my little rectangle section up here. So that's my first section. Make sure that it's nice and clean. Now I had 5 minutes to do that and to section and to take the rods out. So remember, it took me 1 minute to get my rods out. Then I'm going to do apex to nape, side to side, divide into sections as I work my way through. I'm going to have one over on the side here and some more clips. So if you dumped all your perm rods out at this point, those are going to go into your to be disinfected bag. So anything that you don't need anymore, I would throw in your to be disinfected bag along with any baggie that it came in. But remember, you can have all of that stuff out as you're working your way through the service. Because this is considered one client. So even though you're doing services on them that wouldn't necessarily be considered able to use in the same service, you can at this point because you have what you need. All right, so got my client section into 5, 1 on the top, across the back, and 1 on each side. All right, so when I do that, then they say maintains drape throughout the section I'm being evaluated on. Items to be disinfected, soiled linens and trash are disposed throughout the section, making sure that I am sanitizing as I go along if I need to. Then as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to step back. And they're going to say to me, all candidates have indicated they have completed this section of the examination and we are ready to proceed. So now they're going to tell you that you're going to do a predisposition test. You have 10 minutes to do this as well as your strand test, which means that you need your color. So you need a bowl that's labeled color. Means that you need something to wash behind the ear, means that you need a piece of foil, it needs a Q-tip or something to apply the color behind the ear, as well as foil, ear brush, everything that you would need in order to perform this service. So they're going to say you perform the predisposition test and strand test for permanent hair color. You will demonstrate the predisposition test behind the ear. You will demonstrate the strand test on the single subsection of the hair. You'll be expected to follow all client protection, safety, and infection control procedures. You have 10 minutes to complete this section. You'll be informed when you have 5 minutes remaining. Oops. And then step back when you're finished. They're going to read that, and then they're going to tell you may begin. So as I clean up everything that I don't need for that service. So any perm rods that I have left, any my end wraps, my cotton, my plastic cap, all of that was cleaned up. I wanted to make sure that I have everything I need. Oops, sorry, grab my foil from over here. So I'm going to take my cotton with a little soap and water. I'm going to wash off behind the ear to do my predisposition test. I wiped it off behind the ear. I'm going to take a little stick and apply that color behind the ear. I'm up nice and close and personal for you guys. Sorry about that. That's going to be in my bowl that's labeled color. So I want to make sure that I just take a smidge of that out of my bowl. This color can be used for the predisposition test, the strand test, and your foiling. So you really only need one little thing. And then after I cleaned it off with soap and water, I put a little bit of color behind the ear and I let it be. Then I proceed to my foiling of my section. So demonstrate my strand test. Now remember, a strand test doesn't have to be huge. I can move it right in the middle of a section. I'm going to slice off, clip that out of the way. So this is 10 minutes that I have to do this section. I don't even need to do the full section. I only need to do part of it, and I only need to do a smidge of it. So with this section, I'm going to take my foil. I'm going to take that foil, place it in there, and I'm going to paint a little color on. So now I have my color brush, and I'm going to paint that on for my strand test as I'm working my way through. Hold up my foil, lock it in, and put it up out of the way. So I did that. So I performed the predisposition test, demonstrated behind the ear, strand test on any single subsection of the hair. I followed client protection and safety and sanitation. So I sanitized my hands again, working my way through. I have finished it. Even though you had 10 minutes, it took me like 2 to do it. As long as I have everything set up, I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm going to leave that on there, sanitize my hands. If I want, I can take off my gloves from here. So they've watched all of the students or all of the testers do that. So they're testing to make sure that I had predisposition test and strand test supplies labeled in English. My implements and supplies are visibly clean. I demonstrate that predisposition test behind the ear. I demonstrated the strand test process so that if I go through here, I could literally wipe that off and check that too. If I felt like that was an important thing, I kept my drape on. And then I made sure that what I was done using went into the either to be disinfected, trash, or laundry. So I'm done with that service. All candidates have indicated that they have completed this section of the examination and we are ready to proceed. The next service says, you will perform highlighting with foil virgin application. You will place 4 foils on the top of the head from the front hairline to the apex. So starting in the front of the head, working my way up to the apex. We do not have to foil all of those. You only have to do 4 foils. Apply simulated highlighting product from the upper edge of the foil to the hair ends, which means that that's a virgin. You're doing the entire strand. Following all client protection, safety, and infection control procedures, 15 minutes to complete this section. Informed when you have 8 minutes remaining, step back to indicate when you've finished. Then it tells me again that they repeat it and they tell me that they are ready to begin. So at this point, I'm going to turn my client around so that I can get to her better in this situation. No, you don't normally have a stand like this, but because you weren't able to see everything in the camera, I had to readjust. So I want to make sure that I'm foiling for the front of the head. Now, as I'm practicing, I like to set my timer because I have 15 minutes to do this, 15 minutes to complete the section 8 to go. So I'm going to make sure that I set my timer for 15 minutes as I'm practicing, as I go through. I have my foils, I have my color, I have a brush, I have an extra brush and a universal kit. Set my timer. I'm going to sanitize my hands. They're going to tell me that I'm ready to begin. So as I work my way through, close that down, and then they tell me you may begin. So remember, full foils straight starting at the front hairline to the back. So I'm just going to slice off. It'll take me less. I'll be able to get a nice thin slice, but it takes me less time to do that, and I don't have to worry about bleeders. So I slice this chunk off in the front. From that chunk, I'm actually going to take a slice off. Grab my foil. What they're wanting to see is that you're protecting your client's face. So making sure that when you apply the foil that you're folding it up out of your client's face afterwards. So I slide it through, I hold it in place. I start my color application up in the front. My product is labeled color. We're going to throw a little food coloring in there as well. They want to see that I've spread the hair around. I'm going to get underneath that foil, hold it in place so that it's not slipping down. Moving that hair around so that it's thoroughly coated. Folding my foil up. And then at this point, I'm going to fold my foil again. The reason I'm going to fold my foil again is I want to make sure that it stays out of my client's face, that I'm protecting them while they have the color on their hair. I'm going to go back. I'm going to leave a little bit of space in between. I probably left about a 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to take another slice off the top. Make sure that you're taking it thick enough to hold the hair, but thin enough that your foil's not going to slip down. I like to lay all my foils out instead of leaving them in the box. That way they're easier to grab and I don't have to worry about pulling them out, dropping any on the floor. If I did drop all my foils on the floor, you don't really have much option. So maybe what you want to do is you want to have a couple that you left in your bag in case you actually drop some on the floor. So again, fold this up out of the way. I would fold it up out of my client's face as I'm working my way forward. From there, I'm going to do another 3/4 of an inch back. Clip that hair up out of the way so that it stays. Take my slice off the top. Make sure it's a clean slice as I work my way up. Take my foil, get it in there nice and close to the scalp. Make sure I have my color. Get it as close as possible without bleeding. Make sure you're spreading it around. I'm protecting my client underneath here. So I have the foil, my hand under the foil. Fold the foil up out of my client's face, and I have one more left. So again, about 3/4 of an inch slice, or a 1/2 inch or an inch, whichever. But make sure that it's a nice clean slice off the top so you can get close. And make sure that it's thick enough that it actually is going to hold the hair instead of just product and start to slip out with the foil. So they're watching to make sure you don't have any bleeders. They're watching to make sure that you took clean sections, that you're protecting your client's face as you're applying the product, as you're working your way through the hair. All right, so I have all my foils done. That took me about 4 minutes. So making sure that I'm working my way through. I stepped back to indicate that I was finished. So at this point, they want to make sure that my color's labeled. So my highlighting and foil supplies are labeled. My implements and supplies are visibly clean. I subsectioned the hair, so I had that 5 in there, took my slice of it off, and I used correct foil placement, which means the instructions said to start at the front hairline. So I have a little bit of hair hanging in my client's eyes. I would probably make sure that I clean that out as well. So at this point, all candidates have indicated they've completed the section. Please do nothing until the next verbal instructions are given, or if you're not complete in that time, they will actually tell everyone to stop working. And they're going to be checking for your final results. So they're going to make sure you don't have any bleeders, maybe looking through your foils to make sure there's no lightener / cholesterol / color on the scalp. So they're looking through that section. Did I maintain drape? My client was thoroughly draped all the time, and also all of my items were disinfected. So I can throw my comb into my to be disinfected bin. I can put my foils in the trash unless I still had them in a baggie. Then I could leave whatever I had that I was done with that service. I could actually throw that into the to be disinfected foils bag. So I have my 4 foils. And then all examiners have indicated they're ready to proceed. So they're just going to walk around to make sure that you actually have no bleeders, that your foil placement is nice, that you've followed safety and sanitation as you worked your way through. So during this time, I just constantly keep sanitizing my hands, not to the point that they're dripping off or anything. If I wanted to throw my gloves away at this time, I could. If I had holes in my gloves at this time, I would want to switch those out. Now my next service says I have 10 minutes. You will perform a hair color retouch application. You will apply simulated hair color product to one section in the back of the head. The client has 1 inch of regrowth. You'll be expected to follow all client protection, safety, and infection control procedures. You will have 10 minutes to complete this section. You will be informed when you have 5 minutes remaining. Step back to indicate when you have finished. So remember, you guys, you set up for all these services, so all of your stuff should be out right now. Then they're going to read it again, and then they're going to tell me you may begin. So I'm going to have my bowl of color, which I already had for my foil. I'm going to do my implements and supplies are visibly clean, and then I subsection for hair color retouch. So I'm going to set my timer because I have 10 minutes to do this. And then they're going to say, you may begin. So I'm going to make sure I have my client in a way that I can get to the back of their head. And remember, this is considered a retouch. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to retouch the hair. So I have this section in the front here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go around this section. So I'm going to do this back section here. I'm going to do one section. And remember, it's 1 inch as I go through. So I already have my protective cream on from before. If I don't, I would want to make sure that I put my protective cream on again around the face. So we're doing 1 inch of regrowth. I'm going to take my section. I'm going to do my 1 inch. So make sure that you're not moving too far up the strand. My client has fairly thin hair. But remember, 10 minutes to do this section in the back here. I'm literally making sure that I'm moving only 1 inch up the hair. So another option for this might be shaving cream. If you wanted to use shaving cream for your product as you go through, I would get the shaving cream in the can. You can also mix that with cholesterol if you wanted to. Those are options as we work through the service. So don't take too thick of sections that you can't go through, and be careful that you're not pushing the color up. So I'm only doing 1 inch because that's what my client had for regrowth. Moving up the hair 1 inch. Working my way, I did around the section. And now I'm going into the section. So my client has hair that's about 4 to 5 inches. That's about a good length because that'll help you. So if you went in with 6 inches and you cut an inch off for your cut, now you're down to 5 inches. Good length to work with for your state boards. So take a thin enough section that you can thoroughly cover everything. You can do from the bottom up. Working my way across, not taking too thick of sections. All right, and then I'm going to pull it down. And so that took me not even 4 minutes to apply. So if I got any on the other side, I'm going to take that off. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to cross check to make sure everything is covered. If it's not, I'm going to go back in with my brush and apply some. So if I took too thick sections, I'm going to go through, but make sure that it looks like everything is covered. So even if you know that you put product on that, go back and just recheck to make sure that it's thoroughly covered. So if they have a thicker area around the hairline, I might have to go in around the hairline and apply some more, but not too big a chunk as I work my way through. Now my client's hair is still wet from the perm. Yours might not be because it'll probably take a little bit of time for them to get to everyone. So I thoroughly checked my hair. I pulled it apart to oxidize it. I'm done with my color service. So they're checking that all my supplies are labeled in English, which means my color and everything else. My implements are visibly clean. I subsectioned the hair for a hair color retouch. Excuse me. I applied the hair color product, my final result of that, meaning that I'm not too far up the strand, that I'm not far enough up the strand. I kept my drape on the entire time, and that items to be disinfected. So if I'm done with this service, I can throw my brush in my to be disinfected bin. I'm going to be done with my color application. So I would actually get rid of these gloves. I'd pull them off, I'd throw them in the trash so that I can move on to the next service. So I'm going to sanitize my hands. I'm actually going to throw my color in my to be disinfected bin so that I'm done with that. I know that I'm done with that. I'm not going to go back to it. Throw my brush into my to be disinfected. I've already got rid of pretty much everything else. That took me 5 minutes to apply and to cross-check. So as I went through. So at this point, everything should be cleaned up for my hair color service. All right, so what should be out on my station now is still my first aid kit, my disinfectant. I can have my timer out. I can have clips, combs, and then I'm going to need my relaxer product. So next service is going to be the Virgin Hair Relaxer application with color simulated product. They're going to watch you one by one for this service. You will perform a Virgin Hair Relaxer application. You will apply simulated relaxer product on a single subsection of hair. You'll be expected to follow all client protection, safety, and infection control procedures. You'll be instructed individually by the examiner to demonstrate a Virgin Hair Relaxer application, untimed. Do not begin to demonstrate the Virgin Relaxer application until individually instructed to do so, and then they repeat the instructions. So you're going to be evaluated on your Virgin Hair Relaxer supplies being labeled in English, so make sure you have a little cup thing that I gave you and have relaxer written on it. Your implements and supplies are visibly clean. That you subsection the hair for your relaxer product, and that you apply simulated relaxer product. So at this point, I want to make sure that I have new gloves on for this service because remember, it's a new chemical. Unless you wipe those off and sanitize them along the way. So that's going to be in my all-purpose bag here. I can grab out another pair of gloves. I sanitized my hands before I went in there. I have everything ready to rock and roll as I work my way through. Now that can stay out on your station the whole time or on your workspace at the whole time. So I have new gloves on. I have my relaxer. I have my brush. I lied. I had to grab my brush out of my bag. So I should have that when I'm ready. This is one service that when you might want a small brush for because you're only going to do a small section of the head. So I already have my strand test over here. That's fine. But I'm still going to do my relaxer test over here. So they're going to come over. They're going to ask me to perform, please demonstrate the virgin relaxer application procedure. I can still do it on that same side that I have in the hair. So at this point, I am just going to take this section down, take a piece out, section this up, and I can do a whole row if I want. I can do part of a row. They just want to see that I know how to do it. So if I decide to divide this section in half, that's great. So from there, remember it's a virgin, so I'm going to stay a little bit away from the scalp. I'm going to do mid shaft to porous ends. I'm going to do that top and bottom. And then as if it was processing, I would go back and do the scalp, not on the scalp, up to the scalp, and then I would pull it through my porous ends. So I have that entire strand done. And then at that point, I'm going to press. So I can press with the back of my comb. Whatever I do on the top, I do on the bottom. Work it way all the way through to the ends. Work it all the way to the ends. Could I go back and smooth it with my fingers? I can do it with my fingers too. So if you didn't have a comb, you could do it with your fingers as well. And you're just going to let it down. So if they ask you how would you know if it was ready, you're going to do a press test. If it stays, it's ready. If it bounces back, it's not ready. So that would be that whole service. So if you go all the way through, that would be each one by one by one. So we're going to subsection our hair for that relaxer. And then at that point, I'm going to throw everything away. My comb to be disinfected. My relaxer goes into the to be disinfected. My brush goes into the to be disinfected. I like to wipe all my stuff off with a napkin or a paper towel and throw that in the trash so that I don't have goo all over everything, so that I can just move forward with the next services. So I took my gloves off. I have them inside out. I actually put my paper towel inside. Throw it in the trash. Sanitize my hands again for the 100th time, which you guys will be used to at the end of this whole session. If there's too much on my hands, I might wipe them off with a paper towel because I got a pretty big blob out that time. So go through and wipe them off with a paper towel. All right, so then they say, please do nothing until the next verbal instructions are given. So they're evaluating me on, did I maintain a drape through this time? Everything that was disposed of went to the right section, and we went from there. So now, when everyone is evaluated on that, we do the blood exposure procedure. You have 10 minutes to do this. Again, I like to set my timer, but I make sure if this is still out. We have all of this set up from before because they told us to do that. So they're going to read, you will demonstrate the blood exposure procedure. You will imagine the following scenario. During a service, you sustain a minor cut to your index finger. So it's going to be your pointer finger on your non-dominant hand. The injury is such that you can continue with the service. Your work area or client has not been contaminated. You're expected to demonstrate the proper procedure for blood exposure. You're expected to follow client protection, safety, and infection control procedures. You will have 10 minutes to complete the section. You'll be informed when you have 3 minutes remaining. Step back to indicate when you have finished. So you're going to need 2 baggies. You're going to need your first aid kit with the baggie in there. You're going to need a Band-Aid, alcohol, and a wipe, something to clean it off with. And then you're going to need a finger cot or glove to wear over your hand during the service. So they want to make sure that your first aid kit is labeled. They remove the materials from the first aid kit in a safe and sanitary manner. Your supplies are visibly clean and materials. You clean the injured area with antiseptic or your alcohol. You cover that with absorbent and secured Band-Aid. You wear a glove or finger guard and dispose of all contaminated supplies. All right, so make sure that you get your whole first aid kit out. You actually are holding the finger up that you cut. So this is your pointer finger. So from there, you're going to need to get either a cotton round or something out of your bag, keeping my finger up the whole time. So if you had alcohol wipes, that works too. So if you wanted to use those, I'm making sure I keep my finger up the whole time. I put my alcohol on. This cotton actually needs to go into my garbage that I actually have everything else go into. So I cleaned the area off. I'm keeping my finger up this whole time. I sanitized my hands before I picked all of this up, so I want to make sure that I sanitize my hands. Your Band-Aids will either be in your box or in your bag. Got to hold my finger up as I'm working my way through. Put your garbage inside your baggie with your good hand. I'm going to apply the Band-Aid. Oops, throw that in my baggie. Get that on. Go back and put the glove on. And sanitize my hand. Everything that's in the baggie gets zip-locked up. So this is my double bag procedure and thrown into the trash. Then I sanitize my good hand and I work through. So sanitize your hands. Open your baggie after your hands are sanitized. Get alcohol wipe. Wipe the cut off. Cover it with your Band-Aid. Everything that you're using goes into that baggie so that it can go, and then put a glove on it to sanitize your good hand. So you can put a glove on this hand too when you take it out before you go, which is hard to do, but you should really be doing that as well. And that's all of the things that are going with hair. So at that point, clean up everything that you don't need anymore. So you'll need your water for your nails, so you want to keep that out, and you should have your manicure kit and everything. So now you only have 2 minutes to set up your hair removal and your polish. So make sure that you have all of those things in your bag as we go forward. Oh, so when you're done with this service, when you start the next one, you can actually take your glove off, throw that in the garbage. It's as if it was done before. But I would take your glove off inside out and throw it in your garbage. So that otherwise you can leave it on if you want to, because you're going to need your gloves on for your waxing service. So at this point, clean everything up. I would still keep your first aid kit out because you're going to need your alcohol and everything. So make sure you have your first aid kit out. Make sure you have your water out. All of those items are going to be out in your common bag. I would keep your plastic cap because at this point we're going to cover the hair, because remember it's all gooey. So I'm going to keep it all out of the way. So I have another plastic cap, or I'm keeping this plastic cap so that I can utilize it. Or I can utilize it when I'm ready to go, because your head will be all gooey. Bring a plastic bag or something to put it in. So I've cleaned up my area. I've actually gone through and I've wiped it down with my barbicide wipe. Threw that in the trash. And I'm getting out my items I'm not getting them out yet. We'll go through it. So that completes the hair portion of the service. So we've done cut and thermal curl in the first service in opposite order, so thermal curl and first service. You should have wiped off your curling iron, put it into your to be disinfected bag after it cooled during the haircut. That should have been all cleaned up. Then you went through and you set up everything for your chemical services. So everything should be cleaned up now, and then we'll move on to the waxing services.